Another day, another budget Chifi IEM to take a look at. Well, today we'll be looking at the Kiwi Ears Cadenza, a relatively newcomer to the busy Chifi scene that's been exploding in popularity recently. Now, I've heard good things about the Cadenza. It's basically the cheapest IEM that they offer, with a pretty fancy looking resin shell, if I do say so myself, and one of the most polished looking box designs and website that I've seen for at least the Chifi brand, right? They've certainly got the presentation down for just a very young brand. But what about the sound of this thing? Well, let's get into it. Okay, right off the gate, I love the graphic design used on this box. Now, I was never a great graphic designer, but I can appreciate a clean product box with well laid out typography and graphic elements, and this is exactly the vibe that gets me going. It kind of looks like a mock-up concept that you'd see on Behance, and I love that. It's a looker of a box, and it's certainly a step above the sort of bland white cardboard of other budget Chifi boxes. Sliding out that outer sleeve, you're gonna get a Kiwi Ears inner box that's in black with a shiny silver Kiwi Ears logo. Once you open that out, you'll see the Kiwi Ears Cadenza inside a foam cutout. Now, with this top level taken off, we will see 3 packs of ear tips. So you're gonna get a matte black sort of generic ear tip. You're also going to get some clear ear tips, but these have thinner walls, but they do have a firmer nozzle than the black ear tips. And finally, you get some red cord but smoky colored ear tips that all come in 3 sizes. So a pretty good, nice varied selection of tips that goes a bit beyond the bare minimum of 3 pairs. And then of course you'll get the twisted black cable, which we'll get to later. Finally, under everything else, there's going to be a small instructional pamphlet. This also doubles as a sort of warranty terms card. It's only printed in English, which is quite uncommon because usually these manuals, they'll come both in Chinese, English, sometimes at Moondrop you'll even get Japanese and Korean, but this is just English. So Kiwi Ears seems to be catering itself to the Western Chifi market quite a lot. Overall, I just love the look, the outer design of the Cadenza's box, and I really hope that other brands take after this trend. It's really not that costly to hire a semi-competent graphic designer, guys. Just do it. Up your package design game if you really care about your product, as Kiwi Ears does here. My gripes here, I guess, with this unboxing would be that there is no pouch or carrying case included. I mean, given that the Moondrop Chew and Truthear Hola are $10 cheaper, and they still managed to include that, I really would have wanted something with the Cadenza. Now, if the box design of the Cadenza has pleased me, then the shell design continues to be eye-catching as well. So you've got a sort of black resin design, as you can see, with a soft and comfy shell that will accommodate many ears quite well for many hours. And of course, on that faceplate here, you're going to get 4 choices of colors of a glittery mix of colored patterns with black intersectioning them. Now, of course, with these kind of colored patterns, for each unit of the Cadenza, you'll have a slightly different look to them. Some with a bit more color, some with a bit more of the black resin. Every unit will look a bit unique and customized, which is cool. However, I will say that the Cadenzas here, they look nicer on pictures, promotional material, and videos than they do in real life. IRL, the colors, they don't pop nearly as much as in the videos and the promotional material. And I don't know about you, but this gold cursive Kiwi Ears text, it kind of seems a bit tacky compared to the clean typography used in the rest of the product. And the other thing that signifies the cheapness is that you can sort of feel the hollowness and the lightness of the resin being used compared to higher end products. But nevertheless, the Kiwi Ears Cadenza, it looks Very nice for being a $30 product. The cable itself, well, it's nothing special. I think I've seen this braid of wire in some other IEM. However, the Cadenza cable is dyed black, which makes it look pretty sleek. And at the end of the day, well, it gets the job done, even if it's a little prone to tangling and with average microphonics. There's also, as you can see here, a pretty utilitarian chin slider that holds its position without slipping and slides relatively smoothly. And the 3.5mm jack here, it looks kind of like just an OEM part, but it's fine nonetheless. When it comes to source matching for the Cadenza, I find myself leaning towards using warmer sounding sources to kind of thicken up its sound a little bit, whilst also easing its at times sharp upper mid-range. But you'll be glad to know that the Cadenza doesn't really need much power to play at its full potential. Just find something a bit warm to complement it. Now, as for ear tips, the Cadenza is fairly flexible, and you can hear it present itself somewhat differently with different tip pairings. So there's a little bit of slight EQ ability here when you change different tips, when you tip roll with the Cadenza. Now, with my default choice, the Acoustune AET07, it essentially performs exactly like Super Review's graphs when compared with the Truthear Hola. But with the red cord smoky ear tips that they included in the package of the Cadenza, these things, right? They make the Cadenza take on sort of a semi-warm and bright tone. But what I will use for testing, and what I recommend you use, is going to be these soft ear UC small size ear tips, these clear TPE tips. They're a bit softer than the Asla Celestex, so they fit me better. Gave me a good fit on the Cadenza, and they keep the warmth of the red cord ear tips, whilst also smoothing out the edges of the sound signature just a little bit. And with that all out of the way, let's get to the sound of the Kiwi Ears Cadenza. I think now that you've looked at the graphs comparing the Cadenza to the Hola, I actually find that both IEMs do sound pretty similar, but the Cadenzas benefit more from tip rolling, and it does do a few things slightly differently in its sound, which we'll address. But let's start with the bass. On the Cadenza here, the lower end is fairly well extended, provides nicely rendered thumps to your music. With a somewhat more lingering decay, it lends a certain lasting impact to some musical notes and drum beats. But it can also be a weakness here because sometimes it overstays its welcome and becomes sort of flabby. Bass definition, it certainly could use some improvements here. With the driver sort of not being able to render bass notes with as much definition as I would like, even compared to its rivals in the $20 range. The mid-range of the Cadenza is somewhat of a love and hate kind of thing. However, it does veer closer to a love side for me. Its lower mids are neutral with an ever so slight drift to the warm side, although tip rolling can change how warm it is perceived a little bit. I prefer the lower mids be a little bit more warm, but this is sufficient still. And upper mids are given a fairly healthy boost, similar to the Moondrop Chew, but then drops off faster to kill some of the possible piercing side effects. This upper mid-range gives the Cadenza a nice crispness when playing vocals and instruments like electronic synths, and it also highlights percussive instruments. But it sort of pushes the limit of the dynamic driver, and it can sometimes result in a crunchy, artifacting feeling in sort of breathier singers. Now, paired with the right source and ear tips, this mid-range sounds bright without being overly intrusive, but you will need to put some work into making it perform best for you. Treble on the Cadenza continues to enhance the crisp presentation of the upper mid-range, spicing up some high-end details, although sometimes, again, going overboard, and contributing to the crunchy artifacting mentioned before. It's fairly low in actual treble detail too, so I'm not too impressed with this treble performance, but at least it doesn't sabotage the other parts of the sound signature. Soundstage width on the Cadenza is pretty alright. It's a step above average, so pretty good, I guess. However, the soundstage height is just rudimentary. Musical elements here, they tend to line up to perform instead of having any height or three-dimensional spatial attributes, giving the cadenzas a pretty weak imaging performance. Technicalities are also not a strong point of the cadenza. Not that it's bad, but that you can get about the same level of performance from lower priced rivals. Macro detail separation and retrieval is excellent, as with most modern budget Chifi, but micro detail extraction is just adequate. The cadenza's texturing is also a bit off. Musical instruments, they sound either a little too sharpened or a little too soft. It's never at a just right level, always to one edge or the other. Not that these are deal breakers, mind you, and not that other IEMs don't exhibit this, but when there are like 4 or 5 other $20 IEMs that could do the same things that the cadenzas do on the technical front, sometimes doing even better than the cadenzas, I do have to point out the cadenza's weaknesses here. Yes, I've mentioned the Truthear Hola a lot in this cadenza review, and not without reason. Both IEMs sound quite similar, though their package presentations differ from each other. The Hola's box uses pretty weak cardboard and is white with a grey inner box, as well as catering to anime fans with the waifu packaging, whilst the cadenza's box goes for a more modern, minimalist design. I'll give the packaging win to the cadenza because, hey, it survives shipping, unlike the Hola's box here, which looks kind of crumpled and everything. Thank you for that, shipping guys. But yeah, for accessories, although the Holas came with one less type of ear tip, they do give you a pouch, which is a win in my book. Now on the build front, yeah, I said the Hola's resin kind of looks like it's still in the prototyping stage, and that observation hasn't changed. If nothing else, the 10 extra bucks that you pay for the cadenza is going to making a nicer looking, shiny, colorful resin shell. The Hola cable though is better, with more supple wires, although the cadenza cable is fine too. More like personal preference in this case. Sound-wise, the Hola and cadenza basically sound very close to each other, however with two main differences. First is the bass, where I find that the Hola gives it more space to perform and thus has a bit more rumble than the cadenzas. Second will be the upper mid-range slope, which is higher on the cadenza, giving it a crisper, more fun presentation than the Hola's more clinical performance. Both are similar technicalities-wise, with the cadenza's soundstage being a bit wider than the Hola's, but the Hola's imaging edges out a bit more. There's no clear winner for me in this comparison. Do you want the slightly more fun-sounding cadenza with a more refined build, a more fun and nice color-looking shell? Or do you save cash with the more neutral-sounding, more black and white Truthear Hola? You decide. For a young, up-and-coming brand, Kiwi Ears certainly pulled off quite a good first impression with the Kiwi Ears Cadenza. You can hear the dynamic driver being pushed beyond its limits at times, and its technicalities could use some work given the crowded competition that can be found for lower price tags. But the pivot to a clean, minimalist package design is a welcomed breath of fresh air from the usual white cardboard Chifi boxes. And those who aren't into Moondrop and Truthear's anime waifu packaging, I mean, I still like them waifus, but okay, I can see wherever the detractors are coming from. This is also a good choice because it doesn't do the whole waifu marketing stuff as much. That and well, the extra funds going into making quite a looker of an IEM shell, along with a slight modification from the well-received Hola's sound, will allow the Kiwi Ears Cadenza to slot itself into the ever-expanding list of great Chifi options for budget prices.